Rock Bottom Coins is the #1 place to get your Madden 21 coins. If you make coins for my videos, sell them to Rock Bottom. If you're buying, use my code GUTBOX for 10% off. Megabucks here. So, MUT 21, while not completely over, we've basically hit the 99 overall stat cap, so we've done progressing with cards. So I want to go through with what I think are some of the most powerful cards that we got all year. Now, when you look to past Maddens, you think of, you know, Golden Ticket, Megatrons, like the guys that were so significantly better, the Dree Archers, and how much faster they were than everybody else, or had a certain ability, like last year with Moss and Dickerson. The overpowerness of previous cards were like, wow, this guy's an absolute stud. In MUT 21, we had a ton of content, right? A ton of theme teams were well balanced against each other. Obviously, there's some that were a lot better than others, Raiders, Niners through the year, but like Seahawks, you could also argue Washington had a good team, Ravens there too. But with that, it becomes like very hard to pick out cards that are stand out, like because like so many cards are getting released so frequently, like a lot of the guys start to kind of like, you know, I'd say blend in or balance against each other pretty well in MUT. So if that's a good thing, if that's a bad thing, that's up to decide. That's, you know, each individual person, whether like balanced cards or some cards that are more insanely more powerful than others. Like how the show goes with like super overpowered cards, and then like some guys with some good swings, but then like, you know, it's balanced as more content comes out, but there's clearly like, you know, like a few that are just head and shoulders above the rest. You'll see that going back to previous years, even in MLB show in Madden, like I talked about, that you look back and like, wow, that card was crazy. Now this year, this is what, and I asked Twitter for their input and stuff, that I think are kind of like the crazy cards that have been put out this year. Maybe not necessarily insanely overpowered, but pretty overpowered. I think let's start it off. I don't think I'm gonna do like a countdown, but let's do like a top 10, 15, it doesn't matter. The first one that I want to talk about is probably the one that took over the game earliest. You can make some arguments towards the quarterback, but Barry Sanders, the master card on him, you know, we got all through the year the question, is the Barry Sanders set profitable? And the answer was always, yeah, sure, do what you want, it doesn't matter. Tons of old programs we got here: Affinity, Team, Diamond Set 1. So Barry Sanders said it was profitable for me. It was profitable for a lot of guys along the way. So Barry Sanders, who came out with better stats than just about, you know, any running back for a while, he was that dude. I kind of like sets like this. I like sets in these big cards that are rewarded that are significantly better than other cards, and I hope EA can do more like this going forward, where we have memorable cards like, wow, man, he was really a pain to contain, and we really had to like shift our defense around, stop him. And obviously running back, kind of hard to do that. To focus on the wide receivers is a little bit easier, because like the running game, you can spam any run at any direction, and you know, it's very hard to contain him at that point. But I thought this card right away, and probably maybe through the whole year, was one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful card for its time coming out. Number 2 that I want to talk about is Isaiah Simmons. Really any of them from when the rookie master came out all the way through to the Ghost of Madden core master Isaiah Simmons. So Isaiah Simmons himself, with his attributes, with his ability to lurk, his height, I think this is the building and the creating of a future Madden legend, right? He's only been in the league for 1 year now, but he has made himself quite the impression on Madden. I think 21, even after he retires, no matter how long, it's gonna be like, even if he's terrible at this level, he didn't get a ton of playing time this past year, but I think he's gonna go the Taylor Mays route if he's bad. But he's like Taylor Mays plus an inch, which is really saying something. So Isaiah Simmons, get used to seeing him on your MUT rosters for a long time. Isaiah Simmons this year proved himself throughout the year as a dominating force. All right, the next one I want to talk about is limited Darren Waller. And really, Darren Waller cards over the entire year into last year have been kind of nice, right? Since he kind of busted onto the scene, had a great comeback IRL from his issues. But like Darren Waller being at a tight end spot, but being able to kind of reach wide receiver speed, it's kind of a matchup nightmare. Now we know we have that ability matchup nightmare, and it was patched from last year, but Darren Waller himself, the ability to run routes, get separation, the route running on him was solid, the catching was solid, he's tall too. So it's basically everything except for maybe run blocking, the top tier run blocking that you want, everything that you want out of a tight end, and he can really make it happen on the field for you, and he's kind of proven it over and over. So Darren Waller, his limited card specifically stood out dramatically. It was probably the best tight end in the game for like 2 months. So I think in that, like, you know, speed category, you kind of look at like wide receivers, right? The Tyreek Hill base elite that came out, where he was like a couple speed faster than everybody at wide receiver. That one was used quite a bit. But then we kind of got some more wide receiver legends as they kind of dropped for the 50. Mark Clayton, he was really one of the first guys, you know, maybe not the first, but one of the first top end speed guys, hit that 90 deep route running threshold. to beat a lot of the man meta that we saw for the first part of the year until they kind of like nerfed one step ahead, at least the AP cost of it. So Mark Clayton hitting that 90 deep route running was very nice early in the year, especially with speed. Not the tallest guy, kind of like Tyreek there, but he was a burner. 50 Calico really became that first tall guy, was at the end of September. To hit that, 90 deep route running, plus have a great amount of speed on the card to be able to outburn a lot of those faster end corners that a lot of guys were using in man coverage. So those two were really nice. Also, ultimate kickoff Brandon Cooks, he was like $1.5 million for a while until the Series Redux came out. He was absolutely crazy too, and probably that #1 guy until Calico came. So those early game wide receivers that were just hitting the threshold, that were hitting that top end speed to compete with corners, were so very valuable for the roster, because early on in the year the corners did kind of kind of beat on the wide receivers quite a bit. So it wasn't until later when we started getting more, we started to get, Moss, DK. You could say those guys were also very powerful for when they came out, tall and fast. DK was dominating. That was like the bench press meta, and sometimes DK would just be able to like shed the bench press and get you a one-play touchdown if they decided not to play over the top with their deep safeties, because that was probably the most awful meta that I've seen in Madden 21, was during that bench press meta. It made the game very unfun to play. So it was a good thing that bench press took a nerf, and hopefully it's not very powerful next year either, because it's kind of annoying to see your entire team get fatigued, especially fatigued during the play, and you're like, wait, now I can't just run routes, and they'll just run faster than me. Those were nice receivers to have throughout the year. Otherwise, back to quarterbacks, we got Favre. Like, I think Aaron Rodgers and Favre sharing the same motion was really cool and interesting, because Aaron Rodgers' cards came out for the first part of the year until Honors Rodgers, which was awesome, as very underwhelming, because they didn't really hit the thresholds for certain abilities that you needed to throw the ball this year, namely Gunslinger, right? Hot Route Master was nice. So Favre, when he came out with the Gunslinger release, he didn't have Hot Route Master at the time, if I recall correctly. Being able to basically sit in the pocket and deliver strikes with a quick release, because, users are still fast on current gen, and a lot of this is dedicated to current gen. We'll talk about next gen in a second, with one card particularly, but current gen with the ability for you to actually hit between holes, because if it weren't for Gunslinger, this would have been another running year, right? Gunslinger was the reason we could pass the ball in this year's game. Otherwise, it'd be a repeat of Madden 20 and everybody would be running the ball. So like having the ability to kind of get between the zones, especially, and then shaving off just a couple frames is so important, right? Football is a game of inches, so a quarterback that can beat those DBs of inches and sling it in there is so very powerful. So it really turned Madden 21 into a passing game, and frankly, for the better part of it, a decent game overall compared to other Maddens, in my opinion. The meta, while annoying and repetitive a lot of times, and EA does need to fix the meta and look at it a little bit more as the year goes on. Hopefully they can do that going forward, but being able to pass the ball out of a variety of different formations, even though a lot of people take in the same few, is really cool, and I think that's awesome for the game. So Favre with his Gunslinger release, and then in my personal opinion, the Ultimate Legend Favre, where you could get Escape Artist, Gunslinger, Hot Route Master, Inside Deadeye, basically become everything you needed. So the Ultimate Legend Favre, probably my favorite quarterback through the whole year, but I don't know if his power level is that dramatically different than, say, Lamar or Vic now, because of their, added speed on top of it, the ability for them to get outside and make the defense pay more on the ground than Favre can. So that, in my opinion, is one of the more powerful quarterbacks. Other quarterbacks, Gannon, I gotta give a shout out to him, because for like 2 months, it felt like 2 months. If it wasn't 2, it was at least like a month and a half. He was the only quarterback to have Hot Route Master and Gunslinger. So even though you saw a lot of tournament guys use him because of that ability combo, we hated him. I'm not a tournament guy, but they hated him. I hated him. I'm sure a lot of people hated him because of his slower release. It was very annoying to use. It was too bad that we weren't able to get, say, a Favre or an A-Rod with that kind of Hot Route Master Gunslinger release for a while. But Gannon was really the meta quarterback for quite a bit of time during the mid part of the year. On that level, talking about scrambling quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson's Superstar MVP card was by far the most powerful quarterback when he was out, right? You'd argue Barry Sanders at halfback was equally powerful, but quarterback, is the #1 position. And in the quarterback, when Lamar Jackson came out, he was faster than any defender on the field, right? That was back when like defenders were hitting like a high 80s speed and he was in the low 90s. And then quarterback draw was also very good at the time until they patched it. So for a period of time when quarterback running was the meta before it got nerfed, Lamar Jackson was everywhere. You're escaping out the pocket, right? Drawing up the middle, draw through quarterback draw, and then jump right. Remember 5 wide draw and then just jump to the outside. He was able to get a ton of yards. We had to get specific defenses to try and slow him down. And then if they passed the ball, they had like a bunch of wide open dudes. So Lamar Jackson Superstar MVP was a major headache to start the game, and it was a very nice thing that they did was nerfing that a bit. It didn't take like significantly long, but it felt longer than it probably was. But Lamar Jackson's Superstar card with that kind of speed early on was absolutely a game changer, devastatingly so. Some cards that I really liked, I think Legend Ted Hendricks, I don't necessarily know if he's overpowered, but his ability for his attributes, he was great both in zone and rushing the passer, and he was tall, right? 6'7", so he had like that flexibility overall that is like the jack of all trades, like the perfect outside linebacker for somebody that, you know, wasn't like a 3-3-5 wide or a 3-4, right? So like Ted Hendricks becoming that guy was very important to a lot of defenses, and it was really neat to see somebody at outside linebacker that you could drop into coverage and actually play okay out there due to his height. Yeah, sure, he didn't have the highest reaction, wasn't like a DB at subbed in at linebacker, because those things ended up being overpowered, right? Isaiah Simmons we talked about, you know, Jamal Adams was pretty decent there. We had Derwin James is a great user. Those I want to shout them out for great cards that could really play well in coverage. But like Ted Hendricks being like, I would say 90% of that when he came out, and then he could also rush the passer, allowed a lot of flexibility. So I love cards like that. He was crazy overpowered. I think they screwed up his stats somehow because there was no way he should have been that good, but he was, and I really love that legendary card. I hope more cards like that come out in the future. We're like, all right, I can play a linebacker in a position flexible spot where he can kind of do it all, a jack of all trades, but actually excels at them too. So I do want to talk about other favorites of mine before I move on to next gen. I like the 99 Jim Thorpe when he came out, right? Bringing in Jim Thorpe, an absolute legend of all time athletics, the Olympian, the football player back in the day when it was just getting started up. Like Jim Thorpe, I love the way he run. I love the way, you know, they made him. So overall, Jim Thorpe, great card, one of my personal favorites this year. Golden ticket Jadeveon Clowney, shout out to him. I love the ability to put Lurker on a linebacker and then have Enforcer Deflator to cause fumbles, because when he's laying hit stick, dudes are dropping the ball. They're straight up putting the ball on the ground, fumbling, and not having a good time. So fumbles being turnovers are super important. And Jadeveon Clowney, if he lines a guy up that's not on conservative carrying, there's a good chance that ball's hitting the ground, and hopefully your team can recover it. And then I want to talk about next gen a little bit with Derrick Henry. I actually missed some cards here that I want to get back to. Derrick Henry in next gen was an absolute freaking nightmare, right? Always falling forward. Next gen itself was not a good game in my opinion. I know a lot of guys like it because it's slower, it's harder to use her. It kind of narrows the skill gap even more that way. A Tyreek Hill turns unrealistically slow. So it is, you know, in my opinion, obviously the future of Madden, but hopefully they can tune a little bit of the agility problems on next gen and tune the change of direction up, make it the ability for guys to actually play like NFL athletes would be nice, right? Like a lot of guys, you know, like, oh wait, that's perfect, this is how football plays. Yeah, I mean, if you're in high school or middle school, your guys will turn that slow, but these are professionally high-tuned, absolute, every single moment, every single day, working on themselves, bettering themselves. Okay, wait a minute, that much. But getting that much better at the sport of football, and you know, they're just absolute physical freaks. So having them move slow like middle schoolers was kind of annoying, and why I didn't like next gen. Next gen ended up being a running game, a lot due to Derrick Henry and the inability for him to go down, and he's always falling forward for 3 yards carry because O-line, D-line interact are still messed up, and it is sad, right? It is still sad after so many years of saying, hey, O-line, D-line, there's a problem. D-line don't get no push. They don't hold their gap integrity well enough. If you run off the shoulder of an offensive lineman, the defense line will just randomly shed that way. So like, hopefully they can patch that up going into the next year. I know they've talked a lot about doing, like, you know, routes are a lot different for different and unique players. Maybe weight can matter more for O-line, D-line interactions. D-linemen that are like 350 pounds can hold their blocks a little bit better. We don't really see that a whole lot in current gen. You see it maybe slightly, but it doesn't matter nearly enough like it should for weight, and really height a lot of times too, but weight more so for the offensive lineman, defensive lineman. And what like big interior run stuffers can really do for a defense. Derrick Henry in the running game on next gen is kind of awful. I'm sure Jerome Bettis didn't make it any better since he's heavier and 99 speed now. I do want to talk about Deion Sanders, wide receiver too. I missed him. So he's the first one with playmaker and speed, where it's like absolutely just like during the man meta, people discovered, hey, just playmaker your guy against the man and then he'll get open. So like Deion Sanders really opened up a lot of offenses during the first part, mid part of the year, and into, you know, more near the end when they ended up patching the one step ahead. Deion Sanders wide receiver, and then some after them that came out was kind of clutch, right? It was very nice. Deion Sanders, it was weird because when Deion Sanders came out, he only had one theme team, and like he was usable in that theme team. He was usable overall because of how fast he was. But then they released his power up like 3-4 months later. He instantly became relevant again because so many more theme teams could use him on their theme team. And then now he's at the 99 speed with the theme team boost. It was wild what ended up happening to him. He in the man meta, 97 speed wasn't good enough a little later in the year. But then when they gave him the power up, it's like, oh wait, now 99 speed is enough. So it's weird how they brought him back with just that power up into relevancy. So the playmaker and speed on the Deion Sanders wide receiver, absolutely a meta card for a while there until they started releasing more playmaker wide receivers. 50 Reggie Bush or Alvin Kamara goes to Madden with backfield master on them. Sorry, during the man meta of much of the year, now it's switched over to a zone meta. You needed a guy running a halfback Texas route or one of those option routes. The option routes, especially with backfield master, got a ton of separation against man, so it was always a threat. And then you could basically do the option route one way or the angle route the other, so it was very hard for the defense to kind of like put a guy to cover them both, because oftentimes you needed a user then to lock them down. Sometimes you can man up a defensive lineman, they'd keep up for a little bit, but I'd say like Justin Smith was like great for me for a lot of times, that legend Justin Smith, because he came out with like 90 speed for some wild reason. And you can match him up against a halfback. So really the man meta kind of evolved from like, all right, now I have to run an angle route with my halfback to beat man. But then if they match you up with like a defensive tackle on the other side of the field, he'll end up playing that angle route pretty well. It's kind of wild. So it was like a back and forth. So like the fast defensive tackles became like a meta, even though they're, you know, always fast defensive linemen are meta or just speed on defense, because they can actually keep up with the tight end, the halfback angle route. And you'd be like, whoa, okay, that's kind of nice. Now I can go use some other stuff and then maybe circle back to that one later after the high 90 speed Kamara or the high speed Bush got separation there. So those are definitely cards that I wanted to mention. The backfield master on those two, and those two cards particularly. That goes to Madden Kamara. Just he seemed to shed tackles like crazy too. I absolutely did adore that card. And you know, the Bush had that backfield master for 1 AP, which is why he was powerful. So that's my list overall. We can go through it again. I can actually just show it on screen. Barry Sanders master, Isaiah Simmons, any of them. Darren Waller, Tyreek Hill, base elite, Favre gunslinger. I spelled backfield wrong here. Reggie Bush or Kamara, Moss, Gannon, Mark Clayton, Calico, Cooks, Deion Sanders wide receiver, Lamar Jackson superstar, MVP, Derrick Henry on next gen, legend Ted Hendricks, and then some of the cards that I liked too personally. So there you go. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Call to action. I'll see ya tomorrow.